Hey, welcome to yet another episode of CW Movie Night. And tonight, Thomas was feeling a little under the weather, and we can let him elaborate on that in the next episode if he wants to. But he's in the chat there hanging out. But we have Mike, Sith Scale Collector, hanging out with us tonight to talk about Alien Romulus. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good, Chris. Thanks for having me sit in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I put out the call in the CW network chat, and it was slim pickings. There's a lot of guys who haven't seen this movie yet for some reason, and here I was thinking that it's a religious obligation to see a new Alien film within a week of its release, but maybe I don't
Well,
know what I'm talking about.
no, I agree. I felt like it was my duty.
Yeah, man. So I don't know. I thought that like maybe this is something worth chatting about because say what you want about the Alien and or Predator franchise, it has its ups and downs, but even the worst of these films are thoroughly enjoyable, entertaining watches. Even the one time when Alien vs Predator was PG-13, it was still thoroughly amusing. Like,
Was that the
you know what
second
I
one?
mean? That's the first one was
Was the
PG-13.
first? Okay.
Yeah, and then they wanted to really hammer in the point that the second one was rated R, so they called it AVPR. Get it? That's the
That's
Requiem
right.
is an afterthought,
That's right.
That's yeah, they made up the word Requiem so they could call it AVPR.
That's
Yeah.
great.
But yeah, that's
Innovative thinking out there in Hollywood.
you know what I mean? So like but it almost used to be even that one is like it's like pizza delivery guy versus Alien versus Predator. That's a wild movie. But
Right.
yeah. So they've toned it down a little bit since then. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is like this. I mean, this movie has a lot of posters, and I went with this one for our thumbnail because it's the one you're gonna see most places. But like, man, are there some lame posters for this movie? Like the bar is high for Alien posters, and it's just like some of the international ones were a lot cooler than this. Like, I feel like we're sort of losing an edge for graphic design out here, but
I find
they
that's
they
often the case these days. The international stuff seems to be better. Even like trailers and stuff seem to get
yeah.
better hits.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll take a look at some of that. There was some interesting marketing stuff going on for this movie, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I mean, did you like were how did you feel about the last couple installments, Prometheus and Alien Covenant? Like, were you on board with those, or did you sort of think that was had the franchise heading in the wrong direction?
I thought it was a valid attempt to do something different, if nothing else. I think, and we'll get into a little bit more, but I think the biggest problem with movies like Aliens and Predator is that the mystery's gone, right? So by the newer ones, they try to interject some sort of new mystery, a new storyline, give you something fresh. I don't necessarily know that it landed, but kind of as you mentioned, in the intro, still felt, in order to keep my nerd card, I had to go see an Alien movie, so they're entertaining in what they are, but um, yeah, I don't think I've watched them since originally seeing them in the theater, so I guess that kind of tells you my overall thoughts.
Oh wow, not even Prometheus, huh? It's theaters and that's it, huh?
That was it.
Wow.
I
Okay,
mentioned
okay.
before we came on, they're on my list of rewatches, just haven't gotten there yet.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, so like it's relevant because there's a perception in the air, especially by the studio clearly that especially after whatever I guess the box office take for Covenant wasn't mind-blowing, so they were like, it's time to refocus, okay?
Yeah,
We're gonna we're gonna
yeah.
take this back to its roots, supposedly, even though Ridley Scott directed the last two and they're prequels. I don't know how you get closer to the roots than that. But
Well, the
nevertheless, we're
roots
gonna
are
take it.
green like money, so that's all that they care about.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know, I have a little bit of a different take. Like when I saw Covenant in theaters, I was like, oh man, this is some real shark jumping going on here. But I don't know if I mentioned this on a previous stream, but like I rewatched Covenant for the first time since it came out in 2017, like a month ago, and I think it aged really well because as we all know, uh movies just get worse and worse as time progresses. That's
Yeah,
how our
right.
society works right now. And I thought Covenant was refreshingly interesting watching it in the current context. But yeah, that's not what we have going on in the cultural zeitgeist. So 20th Century Studios, sans Fox in the name, now owned by Disney, thought we were going to go a little bit back to basics with Alien Covenant, in which, you got some good old spaceship action where xenomorphs and facehuggers and such are going to be chasing people around the dimly lit corridors of a spaceship. And, if it wasn't obvious, big time spoiler alert here. We're going to be talking about specific scenes in the movie, and I know this better than anybody. I saw a spoiler on Facebook a couple hours before I went to the movie. It sucked, but as far as I'm concerned, it's been a week, and if you cared, you'd have seen it by now. This is serious business. This isn't practice. This is the game. This is an alien movie. This is not an MCU movie. All right, like we're not talking about nonsense here. That is optional viewing material. This is the real stuff. You have to go to see theaters and see this. You're messing up if you're not. So we'll give you another 5 or 6 seconds to leave. And it looks like there's a lot of guys in the CW audience who haven't watched this movie yet based on the live viewers. But we're gonna get there. You're gonna come on back and watch it after you've seen the movie. But yeah, man. So talking about Alien Romulus here, the broad synopsis, spoiler free, is while scavenging the deep ends of a derelict space station, a group of young space colonists come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that there's a couple. I mean, is it the most terrifying life form in the universe? It probably was at one point in history, but
It's
but
still pretty terrifying, but maybe that's just maybe I'm just scarred from my childhood.
yeah, totally. I mean, I think that you have to, like you said, a lot of the mystery is gone, and
Yeah.
you're sort of you're coming at this thing with a sort of understanding of how this creature works, and what are they going to try and do to give us a fresh take on it? Well, the first thing we get to see in this movie is the delightful space colony of Jackson Star. Now, I don't know. I don't know what you think about Jackson Star, but the only other look we get at a space colony in this universe is Hadley's Hope from Aliens. Really, for a sort of this is the comparable thing. It's like they're doing atmosphere processing and all that, and it's one of those situations where they take some graphical elements from the other films. Like you can see in this shot here, you have the big atmosphere processor that you see in Aliens, and you even have the exact same little neon bar sign that you have in Aliens as well. So like they're just in this one shot, you already have two uh direct visual references to Aliens there. But what did you think of the sort of Jackson's star scenes?
I enjoyed them actually. I think to your point, I think they did a pretty good job bringing you back into the world, right? Putting you in a familiar place, familiar surroundings. I love the feel of it. Again, I mentioned just childhood stuff with Star Wars and everything, but I love the dirty, dark, kind of grimy, space planet. Working man's planet. Anytime you have essentially a giant corporation is the villain of anything, I'm down for it. So yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I thought like I said, it really kind of brought you back to at least from what I remember, the overall feel and the overall look, the tone,
Yeah.
the color palettes and everything.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, so, like, and when you talk about like Hadley's Hope and Aliens, it's like when you see the theatrical cut of the movie, everybody's already dead. So it's like, yeah, you get a little bit of a taste of what the place looked like, but you have to go to our Lord and Savior Jimmy C extended edition to see what Hadley's Hope looked like while it was still in operation. And you don't get a lot, you get a
Right.
taste of the idea that you just get a little bit of the office life, and you get to see that, yeah, there's families there, and Newt's family gets sent off to explore a GPS position that was given to them by the company because Ripley got awoken from her hypersleep, then
Yeah.
hell ensues basically. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's one of those things where it's like the whole scene here, we get introduced to our lead character Rain, and she's in line at the mining office there, and like the way it's presented, where she's earned her like vacation tokens or whatever it is, and like she
Vacation.
gets sort of she gets like denied, and the lady at the desk is like, you're actually gonna have to work for like 7 more years before you get
Yeah.
to go on vacation. And it's like, I don't know about you, man, I found that like cartoonishly uh like evil. Like I like as we know the company's evil, but you have to get it's kind of like how the US military industrial complex is like hiding the truth about aliens in America right now today, Like it's evil, but you have to get like right up there to the the top of you have to be on the fulcrum, the cutting edge of nonsense, like what Ripley is experiencing in the original trilogy. These guys are the peons, right? Like they shouldn't be seeing that face of the company. You know what I mean? I thought it was almost too much when she
You
said, "Yeah, 7 more years."
you're not wrong in anything you said right there. However, I will counter that to say the day that I saw the movie was after a particularly rough day at work, and that's exactly how I felt about the company that I worked for at the time. That
Oh
was
my god.
exactly it. Like I honestly, I'm counting my days, to retirement, which are way off,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
imagining that happening to me. So it actually, you're right. It was cartoonish, but it just kind of made me sink in my chair a little bit. Like, how can that happen to anybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, how do you're it's like it's yeah, it's like when you wake up and you're like, "Oh, I've made how did I find myself here career-wise? I'm on this remote space colony, punching tickets, mining rocks." And they even got like, it was I mean, it was a little on the nose in parts. Like like they have a literal canary in a cage that they're bringing down into the mines to see if it dies. Like 1930s mining style, whatever it is. Like that, I don't know about all
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
It's
and again, you're not wrong, but as you said earlier, the kind of writing and stuff that we get today, none of it's surprising,
yeah,
right? I mean, they break it down to the minimum, try and just get to the point as obvious as possible,
yeah,
so that everybody and anybody can understand what they're after.
fair
Obviously, the
enough.
only intent was there to drive the point home that she's now desperate enough to proceed with the mission as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
And
And
they weren't wasting any time. And let's be honest, we just want to get on the ship with the alien too, right? So let's not
yeah.
draw it out too much.
No, 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 fair enough. I get what you're saying, but it's almost like, I don't know. It's like it's just not very nuanced, is what I'm saying.
Mm,
It's
no.
some of the depictions of the culture, but and because this movie's still in theaters, and I can't just mine screenshots like I usually do, you're gonna have to put up with. We're gonna have a mildly out of order discussion here, because I've totally forgot we have this interesting sort of prologue scene where they're coming up. You see a ship coming up on the exploded remains of the Nostromo, which is the ship from the original movie that Ripley self-destructed in an attempt to kill the alien, and she didn't realize it already snuck onto her little escape ship, and she blew up the Nostromo totally in vain. And like when she's getting reprimanded in Aliens, she's like, "You guys, you cost the company like $56 million or whatever in adjusted dollars blowing up that spaceship." Well, she didn't even get the alien, and in fact, even when she blew him out of the airlock of her little escape ship, the Narcissus, I think it's called. Even then, he was able to cling to some trash bags and wrap himself in a little ball, and essentially he was floating out there in space. And the Weyland Yutani Corporation found him in a little garbage pail ball like this, and they take him in for laboratory testing, and they sort of X-ray him and cut him out of this block. And so I guess we're introduced to the idea that they they picked up the original alien from the first movie intact, and they've been working on him in this secretive Romulus station. So I guess it's plausible. The xenomorph's supposed to be a silicone-based life form. I guess it's plausible that that it could
That it survived.
survive in outer space. Like, we hear about like tardigrades, like the little water bears, like could theoretically survive in a vacuum, and that's a real microscopic organism. And like maybe there's some bacteria sitting on the outside of the International Space Station. Who knows, man? But but basically,
Scary
uh,
thoughts.
yeah,
You're
that
right. You're
stuff's
right. You're no, your own alien.
yeah, well, it happens, but basically, we get the idea that the company finally got their hands on the alien, and it was a lot earlier in the timeline than we were supposed to think. Because in the other films, you see them desperately trying to get their hands on a sample, and so this is before Aliens, and they've got the fully intact big chap from Alien, and so we get a look at that, and then we cut back to our colonists, Rain, and her adopted brother Andy, who's an android. Decide they're gonna with their friends. They decide they're gonna like hijack a ship, and like Mike was saying, we're gonna get these kids onto Romulus station here. So, they
Yeah,
when
Chris,
you're under,
going back to that
yeah,
opening scene, if I could, do you feel it was
yeah,
necessary? Because like I
like
made the comments about her getting more work shifts and stuff. Kind of as generic as
yeah,
it was kind of like setting things up. I felt like this, although it had some cool shots, kind
yeah.
of felt a little pointless to me. Like, you know what I mean? Was it necessary? Like, do you think if this was missing, we're somehow not sure with what's going on?
Well, I'm if I'm not mistaken, surprise cameo of the month verbally explains exactly what happened here, anyways.
Yeah,
But I think I mean, if to be devil's advocate here, I think what they're going for is they're leaning into their hubris, and they're thinking, if somebody watches this right after they watch Alien, I want the continuity to be like somewhat relevant. It is either way, but it's like a direct bridge from the end of that movie to this one, and I think
sure.
that's probably what they were thinking with it.
And to your point,
But
the future cameo kind of telling us the same thing. I mean, when it comes to movies, I'm all for, show us, don't tell us, since that
yeah,
is the medium. But then they told us anyways. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
yeah,
they were really trying to hammer this home. It's like, if
yeah.
you didn't already get it, or if you were late, here's what happened.
Exactly. And I think they hatch this band of early 20s youths hatch this plan to they realize for some reason they
Did you say
have the
Utes?
yeah, they have the knowledge that this space this Weyland-Yutani space station is it's passing through the neighborhood, and they know it's not in operation. I have a lot of questions about this. First of all,
No, that's where you're going wrong.
first of
It
all,
just happens.
there's a whole company down there, the mining operation, the lady at the desk, all those guys. They don't have the same telemetry data that these kids have. Apparently, I don't know what the deal with that is. And then also, it's like, did Romulus Station? Were they not in any communication with head office? We got this new alien. We're working on it. Uh, Maybe one guy pulled the fire alarm while it was all going down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're
Maybe
right. Like
like
no message or no word got out,
yeah,
from
ultra
start to
classified.
finish, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, we got a quick peek at the station when Big Chap, original alien, is brought in, and then all we know is that it's gone dark and it's passing over this mining colony. And these our band of protagonists say, well, what, maybe we can go up there and steal a ship, or they think it's just a ship at the beginning, so they're going to steal the ship and fly that to the vacation planet from Star Trek, where it's just sunset 24/7, and there's like mai tais and all that. But so they're like, we're going to steal the ship, and then they change that to, we'll steal the cryo tubes and we'll
Yeah.
use our own ship because we that's good and that'll get the job done. So I think Rain's job being so terrible, she agrees to this because 7 more years, that's enough to get you to try and steal a military vehicle. I think it's something that'll send you to jail for the rest of your life.
Right.
That's the sort of stuff you start considering when you look at 7 more years without vacation. I get
Right.
that's you're like, well, let's just risk it all because that's not going to work. So yeah, they get up there into abandoned Romulus station, and like I said, I'm working with trailer screen caps for the most part here. But it doesn't take them long to sort of stumble upon this room that has these like vacuum sealed face huggers and little red
Freeze
cassette tape
dried.
holders. Yeah, yeah, and it's like, and I just I think back to Burke from Aliens was like real keen on getting his hands on two of these guys, and he was really ready to really try some stuff to make it happen. But these guys already got like 50, you know, and they all somehow derived them. We're led to believe they somehow derived them from just having access to the alien from the original movie. Somehow they worked backwards with his DNA to create these guys. All
Right,
that
and
stuff's
all the horror
yeah,
that these things cause. Envisioning how they manage to, like I said, capture and freeze dry these things. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You can only imagine the effort they go through for this many.
exactly. And that they just showed us. They didn't tell us at least. And I mean, it isn't super relevant, so I'll give them that. But it does you really get the sense, and I know Ridley Scott produced this movie and he was involved a little bit, but it's Fede Alvarez directed and he wrote the script. And this is where when you start saying we're not really adding to the creature lore here, basically the whole initiating incident here is we got the body from the first movie. It's not there's no it's not like we're learning about the engineers, or it's not like we're getting alluded to the fact that David the android genetically created the xenomorph or anything crazy like that. Like, oh man, like there's nothing like when in Alien Covenant, when I don't know if you remember this, David rolls up with what's her name from the first movie, I can't even remember her name, but they roll up on the engineer planet and he just like unleashes a bioweapon on them. Like that was the most offside thing I've ever seen. Like what's even
Yeah.
go? That's a bold statement. Nothing like that here. Where it's like Fede Alvarez is like, I know my place. I'm not gonna mess around in the sandbox too much. We're gonna deal with the original xenomorph, and you can't have an alien queen because that'd be stepping on Jimmy C's toes chronologically. So we got original alien and face huggers to work with. So pretty soon this kid's climbing the fridge and they start unleashing face huggers and they start running around screaming. Did you like that the red room with the face huggers crawling around the water and all that? Did that do it for you?
It's like I said, right? So you've lost kind of the mystery of what these things are, right? So they have to find different ways to build suspense, right? So they kind of go for the Jaws approach, right? Like, you can't see what's in the water, but something's bumping your leg. And frankly, that's how I feel anytime I go into the ocean, right? I'm constantly, my head's on a swivel. What's that? What just brushed up my leg? So it it worked for me because I felt that. I felt that kind of panic, of not knowing where you are, or like I said, what that is that just brushed up against your leg. So it worked. Like I said, I think little things like that are really kind of the best we could hope for at this stage in these type of franchises, because I know I keep saying it, but the mystery of what was in Aliens, or as we talked about, like Predator, that reveal scene, you can never replicate that. So you have to find different ways to really just either creep you out, or the jump scares, which I think are two things that this film did good.
Yeah, I think the one place I will absolutely give it credit is like, and we'll get into it a little bit here, but like the creature design and the visual representation of the ships and like the stations near this like gas giant that's got a big ring, and like planets have never looked this good in this franchise. Like,
Yeah,
this is good
it was
stuff.
beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that like that does make a big difference. Like, and you can really tell that there's this shot where the facehuggers are jumping through the glass. Like maybe that's one of the few times the creature is CGI in the whole movie, and like some of the
Yeah.
facehuggers were practical, like little RC things that were running across the floor, and like there's a scene later where they're sort of sneaking through a room of them trying to be real quiet, and you can
Hmm.
tell that they're puppets, not CGI, which like
Yep.
it makes a difference. Your eye can still tell the difference. And and just like, some of the lowest points in the original film by today's standards are like, like when Ripley blows up the Nostromo, it's basically like a 2D cartoon animated explosion.
Yeah.
It's like that's
Yeah.
the one of those things. Ridley Scott, like, he redid some of the monitors and stuff in that movie to make them look a little more like HD, like in post. But he didn't mess with that explosion. He didn't give it like a George
Yeah.
Lucas like sonic ring shooting out the middle of it or
Yeah. Well,
anything
that
like
was
that.
probably why, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's one of those things. And then, of course, in Alien Resurrection, there's a scene where a ship crashes into Earth, and it's like looks like N64 graphics. So this is
Yeah.
beautiful. The planets here, here, the planets and the ships. Like, it's all the ship interiors might even be bordering on like too referential to the original film, but it's almost like it feels almost too familiar. But you go around, and eventually, this girl, and I'm trying to see if I can find her name here. Navarro is the character name. It's Aileen Wu. She's the first one to get facehugger embryo planted in her, if I recall correctly. And
Yeah.
she does not last long. She's like the pilot of the ship here, and she gets like, it it's a cliche thing to say at this point, but they've really sort of like compressed the life cycle of the creature like pretty short. And it's like it seems like within a couple of minutes you go from her getting the facehugger taken off her to
Hmm.
first of all, you had this lovely shot. Like, how do you,
I
that's in a
was gonna
trailer.
say,
What a
you
time to
you
be
picked that
alive.
still?
Yeah, well, somebody picked it for me, and the marketing team picked it, and that good
Wow.
for them. Good for them putting that in the trailer. But yeah, she's not feeling so good pretty quick, and she the face hugger comes out real fast and runs away. And I don't know if I have it here, but we see a new, that might be an earlier version of him, but I'm gonna see if I can find it. But we see a new stage here. Here's a shot of it. It's like a
Yeah.
pod like on the wall that's like, I guess the chest burster like wraps itself up in here and like uses that to like to grow bigger, which it's I mean, we've seen the shedded skins lying around from the chest burster in other films where it's like maybe they pick it up off the ground, it looks like a snake shed or something. But this is like, I think, I mean, it's a cool design. It's very what is it? Reminds me of something, but
Yeah.
it's very similar to I don't know, the one of the few other movies that H.R. Geiger had his hands in was Species, and there's a very similar thing in Species where the lead protagonist Syl, she basically starts out as like a 12-year-old girl, and she climbs up into a space alien pod like that, and then comes out about 30 years old, which it's just
Okay.
like it's exactly what happens in this movie with the
Yeah, you're
alien
right.
basically.
Yeah.
But but it's this thing is not eating a whole lot, and then it uses all this energy to make this pod that's about the same mass as its body. I'm overthinking it again, but it's a waste of energy if you ask me. And I don't see him eating anybody off screen or anything. But
No, and
it's maybe,
I'm
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I was gonna say, I honestly, my reaction to that was entirely based off the physical appearance, right? I mean, there's no hiding. We all know what the xenomorph head was designed to look like, right? You
Yeah.
had the engineer. Like, it's no secret. If you've seen, I'm sure you've seen it, right? You've seen the behind the sealed early, shots of what the xenomorph head was supposed to look like, right? It was even more phallic than what they
Yeah.
landed on, right? I mean, and then it just went the complete other direction just to throw this thing in. It honestly made me laugh more than anything.
Yeah. And I mean, well, it's even worse because you have somebody just jamming a cattle prod in there.
Yeah.
Like, it's like
Yeah, the visuals
on
were
some,
stunning.
yeah, I mean, on some level, it's like, and we'll get to this later, but there was some stuff Disney didn't want in this movie that probably only remained in because Ridley Scott was the producer. If it was just Fede Alvarez, they might have been able to be like, listen here, Fede, you've only directed 3 or 4 films. We know best on these situations. But no, Madman Ridley Scott might have had the veto on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, this is the world we live in. That design is in a Disney film.
How much, if at all, do you know, was James Cameron involved in any of this at
Oh,
all? Do you
James,
know, or
not at all, none
okay?
whatsoever.
I didn't know where he
That's the
stood with the franchise at this point.
Oh yeah. So yeah, so we did talk about this a little bit earlier at Thrawn's office, but yeah, how does it make no sense that Big Chap could have been found near the exploded remains of the Nostromo? Yeah, that's true. Obviously, Ripley did fly out a ways before the ship blew up because she didn't want to go down with it. But the way I like to think of it is maybe Big Chap, he's out there he's like a Titanic survivor. He's swimming out there. He realizes he's screwed, so he just sort of tries to move himself. He uses some jet on his body out of his Rolls Royce engines on his back, and he's in the middle of the ocean, so he's going to go to the nearest piece of floating garbage and just hang on to it for dear life.
I'm sure
That's what you do.
you can create some sort of theory of gravitational pull, pull it back. You know what I mean? Like, once it
Yeah,
explodes, it comes back in. Listen, we can write our own headcanon for that all
yeah.
night.
No, but I mean, that would probably actually be true, but it would probably take about 1,000 years for him to be pulled back to that garbage by gravity alone. But yeah. I mean, listen, they could have showed them picking him up a few miles away from the blown up remains of the Nostromo, but then you couldn't have the shot where they pan a spotlight over the Nostromo printed label on the piece of garbage. It just, they need to remind you where they are. But yeah,
Right,
that did
because
occur to
that's
me.
the thing. Like, that could he could have easily picked that guy up from anywhere. He didn't have to tie it back in, right? I mean, there's nothing. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's nothing that says this thing only exists on that ship at that time, right? I mean, let's
Well,
expand the mythology. Maybe there's more of them out there. Maybe they found it some other planet, or I don't
they're just floating through space now. I don't know, Mike.
know. Well,
That's a bridge too far for me. They're just
yeah, but
floating
that
around
would set up
everywhere.
another prequel that they could explain how
Yeah,
that happened. See, I'm thinking
yeah.
big picture.
Well, that's the real uncomfortable truth, right, Mike? Maybe it's time. We might need to have another chat after you rewatch Prometheus, because let's be real for a second. So this is in the movie Prometheus, that the reason the engineers loaded up that ship and they were going to come wreck shop on Earth was because Jesus was an engineer and we killed him. So they were going to take revenge on us by dropping aliens all over Earth. That's a real part of the movie. That's Ridley Scott's hopes and dreams for the Alien franchise. Jesus was an engineer. Thoughts, opinions?
Well, listen, we really get sidetracked if you want to go there,
No,
right?
no, but
Jesus
that
is the
happened.
original engineer.
Yeah, but but in case
But
you
no,
guys are
you're
wondering,
right.
that's in the
Yep,
movie.
yep,
That's it. That is
yep.
literally
I
in the
do
movie.
remember that
There's a
100%.
the lead character is a Christian, and she's like, "What did we do 2,000 years ago that you wanted to punish us?" It's right
Yeah.
there, guys. Jesus was an alien. But
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Xenomorph Rex shop in this movie, he looks cool. They didn't go like too far off the standard design for the creature, and I think, that's, I mean, you don't need to. They made him a little more like bulbousy looking and like blue, I guess, but
Yeah. We've
there's
seen
not
enough
much to say.
variations.
Yeah, like this is not what's standing out about it. I think what's interesting is, it seems to me, looking at some of the behind the scenes stuff, that they ended up using a lot more like of an animatronic creature. Like they had a full body xenomorph that was on like a gimbal
Hmm.
crane, and it was like they were using that for a lot of the shots, because I guess you can get like um you know um Legacy Studios and Alec Gillis did work on this, and like they did some of the work on Aliens and Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, and I think even up to the second AVP, it was sort of Tom Woodruff Jr. was like the only guy who ever was in the alien suit. He was in the suit from Aliens until AVPR, I think. But
Okay. Wow.
you can get some, yeah, he's even the pred alien in AVPR, and he was probably like 50 years old at the time. But it's one of those things where it's like you can get a really unhuman body proportions when you just make the whole thing a mechanical robot. And even there is even there is some guys in a suit for the xenomorph in this movie, but I don't think they used it as much because they have the sort of backwards bent like dog legs and all that, and you just can't quite do it. But
Yeah.
like I said, I'll give them props for that creature design. But we do have a little bit in here that we did get a little bit of a callback to the original film and Prometheus, and I'll give Fox and Disney, formerly Fox, now 20th Century Studios, I'll give them some credit. I had a real hard time finding pictures of the Ian Holm CGI AI cameo online from this movie. They are flagging that stuff and shutting it down left and right. So here's a picture from the original movie of Ian Holm with his head ripped off. Now this is our big secret cameo from the movie, whereas there's an android ripped in half on this ship called Rook, which is I guess a reference to Bishop. So all the droids are gonna have chess names now.
Right.
But yeah, so what did Ian Holm died like 3 or 4 years ago at this point. So this is a weird
Yeah.
one. It's not like Tarkin with Rogue One where he's been dead for like a couple decades or more. It's like Peter Cushing. It's like this is a pretty recent death of an actor. He was active pretty late into his career. Like I think he shot some new stuff for the Hobbit movies, and he was probably at least in his 70s at that point, doing some old Bilbo scenes for the start of the Hobbit
Yeah.
movies. And yeah, I don't know. What do you like? There's two separate issues here, right? There's like, is it tasteful, and how well did they get away with it from a creative visual perspective, right? So I don't know. I think it is probably distasteful because it's
Yeah,
like
I
you have a
don't
lot of, I don't know.
I I don't know that it is. I mean, if it's not like they made the character I don't know, took advantage, did something stupid with the character. You know what I mean? I mean, I
Yeah.
guess that's relatively speaking, but it's not like they did anything obscene with the body.
No,
If they have
well,
the
except for the
permission
fact that
of
he's
the
ripped in
listen,
half from the
from every
start. They
from
sort of did.
all the other imagery we see in alien films, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
But
Well,
if
go ahead.
it's a fine enough callback. It played a much bigger role and more on screen time than I expected. Once I saw him, I
Yeah.
definitely didn't think that. Um, as you kind of alluded to, I think some of the effects of it were hit or miss in some spots. I think it was
Right.
very jarring. In the scene kind of where he's crawling across the desk. I thought that looked terrible. But some of the scenes where he's kind of just sitting there, we're much better. But anytime he moved drastically, it looked really bad.
Yeah. Thrawn's office says his family signed off on it. If that was my father and he loved the role and we knew he'd had his blessing, uh, I have him play it for an eternity as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but here's where it gets weird for me because this is the first case where let's like I think that the Peter Cushing thing in Rogue One is the best comparison we have right now. So like in that case, you had an actor on set who actually did the voice work as well. So like this is there's like a real, like there's actually an actor tied to the role. This is a considerable character in the movie. It's much more than a cameo. For the last like 40% of the movie he's around, and he's chiming in on the speakers in the building, or we're seeing him on a video monitor, which is like way too well framed, if you ask me, for a guy's ripped in half. It's like right in there
Yeah.
on his face. But
And
he hangs
he's
around a lot.
advancing the plot the whole way too, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and I think that's, to me, that's what kind of made it even better, was they didn't just, quick cameo, throw him in the corner. He
Right.
was essential to the film.
But
So
from what I've heard, it was a animatronic puppet combined with,
mhm.
I guess, like a deep fake, and the voice is done with AI, I guess. So like there's really no actors involved, like at all. You know what I mean? That's what's interesting about it, because like
Yeah.
how it might be the first case like that where it's like it actually leans into the sort of the AI deep fake aspect of it. because we've had James Earl Jones voice generated for the Kenobi show, and like it's like that, but
Hmm.
like it's the
The
closest
next
thing to
step.
an actor giving a performance is if there's a guy with a remote control doing the lip sync for the puppet that was for the actor's benefit that then got animated over. You know what I mean? Like that's the closest
Yeah.
thing to a performance here. And I think that's kind of weird, and it's a notable no matter how you feel about it, it's sort of like a notable step forward where it's like and I think we're going there, but I think you're going to get movies with
That's what I was gonna say.
nobody in them.
I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think you're right. I think it's a scene. It's a film that'll be, if nothing else, will be noted for that. You're absolutely gonna see more of this.
Yeah, because eventually, and they're not going to be copying famous dead actors because that's more expensive than a completely
Hmm.
new face that's never existed before that you don't have to pay royalties to any family for. So,
Yeah.
or well, that's just it. But I mean, do I think they got away with it? Sort of. I think they maybe held on some of the close-ups a little too long. I don't think the lip sync looked that good. I think
Yeah.
they flew a little too close to the sun. Maybe if they would have sprayed him with some android goo blood like this, and he wasn't so clean looking, maybe it would have sold it a little better. We covered this on our first
Yeah.
episode of Movie Night, me and Thomas, but in Alien 3, there's a scene where Lance Henriksen Bishop gets pulled out of the garbage and he looks wrecked. Like one of his eyeballs is like hanging out, his eyelid's gone, he's just
Hmm.
covered in the goo.
Yeah.
And Lance Henriksen is not there. That is fully a puppet, but it has just enough. Like that was 1990, early 90s. So like, puppets were pretty much at the peak of their power. You know what I mean? Like they were doing whatever they could, and it's like, I don't know, man. That puppet sells it for me, and I think that is a great way to do it. But Ian Holm's face is fully intact here, and they hang out on some long close-ups, and I think there's a little bit of lighting inconsistency because when you do deep fakes, like you don't want. This was when they first started doing them, and
The
I
more
was watching a
shadows,
lot
the
of
better, right?
well, that's the thing. I was watching a lot of Corridor Crew, and they're like they're really getting deep into it and doing those Keanu Reeves videos and all that. But it's like the sample library. You want it to have pretty neutral lighting because like if you're feeding it samples of the actor where it was like one spotlight off the side of his face, it's the reference material it's generating is like very specific to that lighting setup, and then it's like
Yeah.
harder to sort of place the character in an environment that makes sense. So like I feel like that when they first put him up on the counter, he's sort of silhouetted, but then as soon as it cuts into the close-ups, it's a very like even sort of flat light on his face. That it
Mm.
stood out to me because it's sort of like you see how the technology is affecting creative decisions that they probably wouldn't have otherwise done. But anyways,
Yeah, and
it's
to your point, right? He was essentially ripped in half. If they would have gave a little bit of damage to his face,
yeah,
to kind of replicate the puppet, as mentioned with Ash, it
yeah,
it would have it would have served that purpose, right? You could have got away with a little more. You could have seen, the android inside, and it could have been a little more janky looking, and you probably would
yeah.
have been more accepted to it. But the fact that, like you said, his face was intact, it was clean. Yeah, it definitely didn't do them any favors.
Yeah, and then so the other big thing here is Rook is our connection to the Prometheus and Alien Covenant films in a way. And
Yeah.
I gotta wonder at some point in the script development, was this character David? You know what I mean? Like, did Ridley Scott be like, come on, just make him David? But I don't think maybe not because Fede Alvarez went out there claiming that this deep fake Ian Holm was Ridley Scott's idea. So like, well, as soon as people started throwing a little bit of shade on it, he was like, it was Madman Ridley Scott. You don't need to talk to him if you don't like it.
Yeah,
But
right. Like you said, you suddenly pull back on your criticism, right? Like,
yeah, I'm becoming more and more a fan of films directed by 80-year-old men. Like that last Mad Max is pretty good. Furiosa was pretty good. Not a lot of people
I
saw it,
haven't
but
seen that one yet.
not bad. And let me tell you, those guys who were making movies in the 70s and 80s, like they're
They
still the
still
guys to
got it.
watch. Yeah, so
Yep.
I'm excited for Gladiator 2. We'll see if it's bonkers. But but like so like but basically Ridley Scott had his third his third in a proposed trilogy of Alien prequels ripped away from him because of the box office performance of Covenant. But he got in there as producer on this, and it's sort of a soft conclusion to the narrative of Alien Prometheus and Alien Covenant, because Rook basically explains to them that there's one line where he's talking about the sort of the black goo they synthesized from the original alien's body, and he talks about how this is like the fountain of youth. Basically, this is what Mr. Wayland died for, which
Mm.
is a whole which is and then it plays a musical cue from the theme from Prometheus, which is really just to hammer it on the head there. But it makes you wonder, like, how does this unless so for him to know how Wayland died in Prometheus, that means David must have made it back at some point and been in some communication with Wayland Yutani, or because nobody survived that mission other than David, essentially. If you watch those two movies, David's the only person from both movies that makes it away alive. So,
And see, now
eventually
if we get
he,
enough people asking that question, Chris,
yeah.
Ridley's going to have to answer it, right? He'll come back, say, now they want it. They want the conclusion to my
Well,
trilogy.
yeah, but I mean, in a
It's almost
way,
like
this,
he's teasing it, right? He's kind of like,
yeah,
come on, you're
yeah.
interested a little bit, right?
Well, the Neil Blomkamp Alien 5 was also a casualty of Ridley Scott's Madman prequel trilogy. So, it's already done a lot of it's already derailed a lot of interesting things, but watch looking back, watch like I said, watching Covenant a month ago, I think it tread a little more new ground than this movie did. But basically we find out that yeah,
Sure.
somehow David eventually brought the he well, maybe he didn't bring the it's tough call, right? Because they have the alien material from the Big Chap alien, not from anything David did, but somehow Rook knows about David. So he's on the
Yeah.
they have a Android Discord together where they don't share information with the company. Who knows what's going on? But yeah, it's at some point I wonder if this character was supposed to be David. They must have gone through the like. I would love to see the behind the scenes on this, because they probably went through all of the possible androids it could be at one point. I'm sure Lance Henriksen was on the table at some point, because he could still do the voice just fine, even though he's like
Yeah.
80. But yeah, it was interesting, but I think the real standout android in this movie is definitely David Johnson, who played Andy. I think he did an awesome job sort of
Yeah.
embodying the mannerisms of the synthetic, and I'm glad a real actor stole the show, because like to me this is his movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he has the most interesting arc. Like, he
Yeah.
finds out that his his hetero life mate was going to leave him behind, because on Vacation Planet they don't allow androids, and he sort of accepts that. He comes to terms with that pretty quick, but you could see that it bothers him. And then he sort of, over the course of the movie, proves himself, and Rain decides that she can't leave him behind, and that's the sort of positive note that the movie ends on. And I mean, that's satisfying. Rain is not barely a character to me, as far as she's sort of a blank slate. I feel like Andy here, played by David Johnson, goes through a lot more of an interesting character arc over the course of the movie. And
100%.
yeah, that's cool. I mean, we haven't had a lead synthetic that, like, on paper, Rain, played by Kaylee Spaney, is the lead, but she's, besides that first little bit on Jackson Star where she gets disappointed about her vacation time, she's sort of just glazed over for the rest of the movie. You know what I mean? Like, stuff just washes over her, and she appears traumatized, but she doesn't have a lot of meaningful interactions for the rest of the movie. As far as, maybe I need to watch it again, but that's how I felt at the time, the one time I
No,
saw it.
I think you're right. And to your point, I mean, her character arc was so generic, right? It was simply, I want to get out of here. Now I'm willing to leave, my best friend, and then, well, now I'm not, and that's kind of it, right? And like, there was no arc. It just, she questioned, her morality to it, her ethics, her
Yeah.
loyalty to her friend. But that was it. There was no real growth of the character.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, like, maybe I was like, I don't know. Maybe I was too tired, but that's how I felt at the time. And then but I don't want to leave out. I think her name is Isabella Merced, who plays Kay, and she is famous for being live action Dora the Explorer, and she
Yep.
has some of the most violent deaths, violent action in this movie. We're told early on that she's pregnant, and as soon as you hear that in an alien movie, there's going to be some horrific thing that happens to this unborn child, and that is absolutely the case. And at some point, they think, I think, what is it, she gets a face hugger on her and they're not sure if it implanted or not. I think that's what
Mm.
happens. And Rook advises her to like inject herself with some of the sort of black serum, because he's like, that'll inoculate you. That's totally what it's supposed to do. That's how it's ever worked, right? That'll protect your baby if you inject yourself with the black goo. And then that's sort of left to
Yeah.
cook for a little while.
Yeah. Trust
But
the evil ant. It's melting in the kitchen, right?
yeah, exactly. But we get a call back to the pulse rifle from Aliens. This is the earlier model of it, and Rain, uh, gets a lesson in how to auto aim, and there's she blasts some aliens in zero G's. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying, "Wow, why even call the Colonial Marines if you can just? Why don't they have these auto aim guns in Aliens?" And because she's like relatively untrained, and she demolishes quite a few
Mhm.
aliens in short order here. But uh, I mean, they do at least like showing the effort of demonstrating that it's like basically an auto aim gun that attaches onto your arm and like manipulates your arm. That's better than if she was just amazing at shooting the first time she tried, right? That, I
No,
see what they're
you're right.
going for.
But I get the point, and I didn't think about it until you just
Yeah.
said that about the way it takes a notch down for the Colonial Marines, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's that easy? I mean,
Yeah.
just point and pull. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean Vasquez in Aliens, is supposed to have a smart gun, like the big minigun on a Steadicam arm is supposed
Hmm.
to do something like that. But like,
Yeah.
it's not portrayed as being that easy, and she bites the dust in horrible, self-imposed grenade fashion. Um, yeah, so I don't. But in other movies, if you have a gun and a clean shot, the xenomorph, it's still an animal at the end of the day. You can blast a lion with a rifle. It doesn't understand firearms in that way. Where once it sees it for a while, it'll avoid them. But you can shoot at aliens and they will die. There's lots of video games that are considered
Right.
canon where you do that, and
And they will just keep
that's
charging you regardless.
exactly. And they go to great lengths in the first movie and the third movie to find reasons why there aren't guns around, because it'd be pretty easy to just shoot the alien if there was. So that's why, there's no guns
Yeah.
on the prison colony, and the Nostromo is an office, and that's why there's not any guns on it. But yeah, man. So they try and escape. They're trying to escape from the space station. I'm all out of order on this. They crash their ship into a perfect. They conveniently mismanage their parking job, and the ship crashes into a hangar somewhere else on the station. Isn't that convenient versus
Right
spinning
where they
off into
needed to be.
space?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, but maybe it's a big space station. I do like the sense of scale you get. There's a few scenes where there's like these big industrial elevators going all over the station, and you
Hmm.
get it gives you a reasonable notion that it's a massive place. I mean, I think if that ship had impacted the interior wall of a hangar the way it's shown, it probably would have just exploded into a million pieces rather than just sort of parking there in totally usable fashion. But that's splitting hairs, you know what I mean? It's all good. It's no big deal. Um,
Putting
but
logic
how
into an
we
alien film.
yeah, I'll stop. But we were talking about Kay, the character Kay, who was pregnant, and she injected herself under Rook's direction with some alien goo. And the climactic moment of this movie is another thing that was really hard to find pictures of online, and all you get, it's like the Patterson Bigfoot footage. All you get is grainy cell phone shots of this monstrosity from the end of the movie. And that is so basically, she she I mean, this is the stuff where it's like they didn't knock it out of the park, but there's one part in this movie where this character sort of reaches into her shirt and it's implied that she is lactating alien black goo, which if you blink and you miss it, but
Yep.
this is a Disney movie. They, somehow they did it, folks. It's not good, but you can't say they sanitized it. That's a wild
Yeah.
visual, and she has a horrible birth scene to a little uh, pale fetus that within about 5 seconds grows into a 7 foot man that looks something like this. So
It's the Thin Man.
yeah. So like, did you get this spoiled for you, or was this a surprise in the theaters?
No, I did not see it. I have two very different thoughts on that last act as a whole, if you will. My first initial reaction, uh, and the buddy that I went and saw it with said it best, is this was fucking nightmare fuel. I mean, this was creepy as shit. So it definitely left its mark. And once that set down, I felt like they'd have ended it 20 minutes sooner. Probably would have landed as a better film.
Yeah,
It almost felt like them feeling the need to interject their own thing now, right? I mean, the whole
yeah,
film lived off of everything we already knew, everything we've already seen. And kind of, again, going back to what I've already said, creating that new shock and awe moment, it felt like they tried to do that. And while it had that effect, I don't think it really did much for the film. And skipping ahead, a few minutes here on this, how many times do we have to have alien be thrown out into space, out the air hangar before we get it? You know what I mean? Like they brought you something new and then just use the same old way to get
yeah,
rid of it. Give me something more creative now that you've gone down this road. But this thing's creepy as shit.
yeah. Well, the weird thing for me is like this is like I think 20th century and Disney, I don't think they believe that anyone remembers Alien Resurrection, but like this is really what happens at the end of Alien Resurrection. Except for the only difference is, this time in Alien Resurrection, there's an alien queen that has partial human DNA because it came out of a clone of Ripley from
Yep.
Alien 3 who already had the alien. So that's a hybrid human alien queen that gives birth to like this other mutant creature that's really pale white like this that is called they
Mm.
call it the newborn, and that's a little more xenomorph than human, but he's got
Yeah.
human eyes and he's a little more
Yep.
expressive. And that was, for the longest time, that was the most hated alien creature. Oh, they really jumped the shark with the newborn. Oh, doesn't that thing look crazy? He also gets sucked out of the airlock. Believe it or not,
Yeah,
these things
right. And
happen.
with this one,
Yeah,
they kind of went the other way, right? Made it a little more human
yeah,
than alien,
yeah,
vice versa. Almost like this is more, straight from the source kind of a thing, right?
yep.
It wasn't, from a
And in
clone of a.
Exactly, and in both cases, it kills its mother as its first act of life, uh, and, like, to me, it's like, I can't fathom that they're making an Alien Resurrection reference, and I feel like if they believed that they were, they wouldn't have even allowed themselves to do it, but it so mirrors it in every way that
Yeah.
it's like,
Yep. You're not
what
wrong.
else, what else can and I think the one weird thing for this is, like, it's a very contentious issue in the Alien fan base. Like Ridley Scott seems to be implying with the end of Alien Covenant that David somehow manipulates the black goo to like create the xenomorph. It sort of implies that that's the
Right.
direction it's heading. Because he's alone on that planet. There's like some crappier like proto xenomorphs, and then he he find now that there's some humans around, he puts a face hugger on one, and then you get the first like standard version of the xenomorph in that film. So, but this sort of implies that the original alien from the egg on the engineer's ship has shared DNA with the engineers as well, because like that's their only sample, and this is sort of going back that direction. And this guy kind of looks like an engineer slash xenomorph hybrid. So they're really muddy in the waters. I don't. I guess it's okay to do that if you never intend on actually explaining what the heck's going on. And at this rate, it's unlikely Ridley Scott will ever have the opportunity to do that. Not
Yeah.
because people have faith in him, but I feel like at this point, if he can do stuff like The Martian and make Gladiator 2 and Napoleon and have people sing his praises, why does he want to go back to Alien where he gets critically derided by the nerds? It's like why people are afraid to work on Star Wars these days, I guess. But so like he'll do more movie. I think that guy's gonna work till the day he dies, but we're probably not gonna. I don't think we're gonna get the answer to what he intended with all this. And really, at the end of the day, he's not the original writer, anyways. Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien, has not been with us for many years. So it's all fanfic at this point, but it's an interesting take. I just don't. It didn't bother me from a canonical perspective, but it did feel like a sort of like Vader at the end of Rogue One. P.S. We need more action and something jarring at the end of this movie. So
Yeah.
what do you guys got? And well,
Yeah, and
yeah,
like I said,
it's
I don't think it needed it. I really don't. I mean, as far as actions, the scene where she's shooting the aliens, and then has to
yeah,
navigate through the acids. I thought that was pretty cool. Like that was enough, right? I
yeah,
mean, look, the first Alien wasn't an action film. So it's okay. It's straddled, the alien and aliens, and in between suspense and
yeah.
action. I didn't think it was necessary. I would say, just to jump back to your point about Ridley, I actually think the complete opposite. I could 100% see him coming back to do this, with this being successful. And I think that the draw is exactly that, right? He wants to finish it. He wants to prove to all the naysayers, if you'd have let me finish this back then, here's what you could have had. It's awesome. I mean, let's be honest. Anybody in this industry, their egos drive what they do, right? So despite the negative receptions of those films, he thinks they're great. His idea, you may get the standard, studio interference. That's why it's bad now, but his idea is great. Let him prove it. I can 100% see if Disney, Fox, whomever, kind of comes to his door and say, "What do you think?" I think he would jump at the chance to come back and officially finish what he was trying to say. It's it's
You know
it's
what?
his baby, right? I mean, it's kind of the same way James Cameron doesn't fully step away from Terminator, right? As much as they
Yeah,
fail and he wants to keep his distance, it's still his baby, and he wants to
yeah.
see it be successful in the end.
I sincerely hope that we see that happen, but I'm not holding my breath. We'll see how things go. But yeah, the way this, I mean, I think this just passed 200 million
Yeah,
internationally or something like that. So we're probably going to see more Alien movies. I chucked a couple behind the scenes shots here showing the legacy effects and Studio Gillis. Here's your animatronic alien here, and they got some face huggers on C stands and stuff. Like they to their credit, as far as a marketing perspective, they did post a lot on social media during the production, giving us a look at like because that's the thing when the alien's not a mystery anymore, you can show stuff like this. You know what I mean? It's like what you're
yeah,
getting
and
anyways. Yeah,
right, and I think it's intentionally shown to guys like us, right? That the old heads here that bitch about the good old days of practical effects, and I
yeah.
think that's exactly why they did it. They wanted to say, hey, you 40, 50-year-old guys, trust us. We're going back to the roots. We're going to do it the way you like it. Here's proof. Come see it. So they knew what they were doing. They knew what the audience wanted to see.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, uh, I think it's almost like casting continuity. The fact that they worked with Legacy Effects, which is Stan Winston's business, and they got Alec Gillis in there. So yeah, that's Alien Romulus. So we're gonna get into our final verdict here. Uh, you know, um, it's interesting, like I'm not blown away by this movie, but at the same time, I knew an alien movie was gonna give me more out of the theater going experience than I usually get. And, you got to keep in mind when for a new movie, these scales are just not accurate. So, Mike, you gave this film 3.5 Men of Culture out of 5, and defend that rating, sir.
Yes, I'll do my best. So it's for me, when you look at it rating out of five, for me, I'm not giving anything a five unless it's, God tier to me, right? So it's automatically that's
Yeah,
not going to happen. For
right.
me, I wanted to just have fun. I didn't want them to do something crazy. I wanted to go and spend 2 hours enjoying an old school alien film. So for me, they nailed that. And honestly, I had so much fun with it. And maybe it's just the nostalgia of it. Again, I went and saw it, on the big screen. I'm not someone who waits to see it at home. So the whole experience, I loved it. The jump scares were great. You saw people around me jumping, when they were supposed to and stuff. Saw some things that were new. Also, they played, paid more than enough respects to the stuff we've already seen. Um, Again, as I thought about it, had that last 20 minutes or whatever it was of that film not been there, I probably would have given it a four. That's how much I just enjoyed it when it was over. But I did knock, like I said, a half of a star or whatever logo you got here, off it just for that, because it just felt like the movie ended and then they didn't let it end, and then they gave us the same ending we've already seen. So what was the point of it? So that's where I landed.
Yeah.
But again, I had a blast. I'll definitely see it again. So
Yeah, yeah, I wasn't far off there, but you got to keep in mind, most things that have come out since 2012 do not get a one on my scale out of five. You know what I mean? Like this was, this is they're pushing the envelope a little bit with some of the gore and some of the ideas and the body horror and all that. I don't think you'll ever get anything quite as graphic as the pred alien installing 5 eggs into a pregnant woman's face, but this is almost that extreme. You know what I mean? This is almost that extreme. And there's some wild stuff in here. It gets a three, but I mean, if this whole franchise is just solid entertainment. There's probably only two or three of them that are god tier, like Mike was saying, but they're all worth a watch, even both AVPs as far as I'm concerned. So it's a good entertaining time. I just can't put it up there with the top 10 films of all time. It doesn't even get anywhere near that. That's just the reality of
no.
uh, we haven't added to that list in about 20 years. Thrawn's
Yeah,
office
no, and like I
thinks
said, I mean,
they should
if
go.
it
He just
no, I
Thrawn's
was just
office
gonna
wants
say,
to
listen,
spend.
for what the price of Doug, you go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. We got lagging going on here.
Yeah, no worries. No, I was just gonna say, for what movies cost these days, it it to me at the end of the day, is it worth it to spend the money and the time and to deal with the people in a movie theater? Yes, this was. Go see it. Don't wait and see it at home or watch it on your iPad. Go out and experience this on the screen the way they're intended.
Exact. Can't agree more. And thanks very much for the super chat, Thrawn's office. That's the thing. This franchise is ripe for a nerd conversation, no matter what you want to say about it. So we got one more segment here, quick little thing here. We always like to cover the collectibles available for a film, and even though this is brand new, there's still a few things to talk about here. So we're in the era of the popcorn bucket, and here's a shot I took of mine. Now, this is the Cinemark version or Cineplex here in Canada, and it's a good old alien xenomorph phallic popcorn bucket for you. I even filled it with some some secondary market popcorn just for this shot, and I think it's glorious. I didn't know that there's a Regal one that looks very similar, but it's actually like a different sculpt. But I don't know. I
Hmm.
have not been getting in on the popcorn bandwagon. If I could have found the Dune one locally, I would have bought it just because I'm a meme collector these days more than any specific niche. But this did it for me. It's got a handle underneath, so you can use it like a shield, just like Alex in Alien vs
Nice.
Predator. Yeah, but this was fun. I don't know if these are getting scalped like crazy. Did you even see these at your theater, Mike?
No, I did not. They were not there. And the buddy that I go with, he was working kind of right down the street and was able to get out of work to go over to the theater as soon as they opened the doors, and they were all gone. So I don't know what they're doing. Part of me thinks, maybe the people at the theater are taking them and, as you said, scalping them. I don't know if there's any sort
Yeah.
of restrictions they have for employers on that stuff, but I think I didn't see any of the Deadpool Wolverine ones in my theater either, so I'm not sure what's happening.
Well, this is, I mean, they went off the rails for this one. Like every theater chain had different stuff. So, like you saw the
Hmm.
Cinemark one I just showed. This is AMC. They had one where like almost like a full sized face hugger on the bucket. Like that is crazy. And they got Wayland Utani shirts. And then Regal had two different ones.
Yeah.
Like they had an alien head, and this one is like, I don't, as far as I know, this one was not available in Canada. And this is probably the coolest one. It's like green
Yeah, that's
glowing
pretty sweet.
tube. That is awesome. And then then you had the Aneka announced a figure of the lead alien with some damage on there, and then an accessory pack which has like the fossilized big chap, which that's, I mean, that's pretty cool stuff if you're into NECA figures, if you're allowed to collect those still on CW. I don't know if where we're at with that these days.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, it's then like I almost like the fossilized big chap more than like the regular alien. It's like, yeah, it's cool. He's like the what do you call that? He's like Shin Godzilla version of the Xenomorph. He's like a little bit more metal looking. He's covered in blood. He's a little more grimy looking. But the fossilized big chap, that is cool. That is a nice little thing you could just have sitting on your desk there. That's fun.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
yeah, but this is the greatest sought after Alien Romulus item right here. So around the time of SDCC, some media agencies were mailed this VHS, which this was not a retail item, and it has a better poster than they ever put anywhere for the movie. But this is a real VHS tape that was sent out as like sort of a promotional hype tool. With a
Wow.
faux weathered sticker on it, and you can actually watch the tape on YouTube if you search it. I mean, it's pretty interesting. It opens up with like retro footage of Bobby Wygant talking about the original Alien movie, and like and what, and about how you should bring your kids to see a rated R movie and then live to regret it. But yeah, man, they mailed this out to a few people. I was the first after I saw it, I was checking eBay for a while and I never saw one. Maybe I got to look again.
Mm,
I don't know what they're going for. I don't know how many they made, but I would very much like to pick one of these up at some point. I would
yeah.
be willing to pay a considerable amount of money for it. I don't know what that is yet, but I'll have to see where they're landing on eBay. But yeah, man, that's I don't know. I don't did you even see any posts about this, or is this new to you?
No, this is the first I've seen that.
Yeah, well, like I said, you can watch what was on there. Somebody did us the pleasure of scanning it and putting it on YouTube, so that's pretty cool. But yeah,
Okay.
man, that's pretty much it for Alien Romulus collectibles that I wanted to cover, and we're gonna get into just our Patreon read here. Unless you got anything else you want to add about the movie there, Mike.
No, man, I think we covered it.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's not groundbreaking. It's just a good way to spend a couple hours and eat some popcorn and watch people die horribly. But yeah, we want to thank our Patreonies. And we got Captain Fordo, Ian CB, Renee Mendez, Eric Mariscal, Quinn Aguirre, King Louis, Mark Pearson, Paul Schreiber, Equan, Chris Valencerina, Ben Thomas, David Jones, Sam Gist, Schwab Retta, Thomas Clark, who he was in the chat today, but he couldn't be here. Get better soon, buddy. Eric Schweitzer, Six Guns Figs, Badfish, Joe Corpus, Luke Skywalker, Dan Lee, Deanie Martin, Big Fern, Caesar American, Mark Phillips, Lisa Martin Bomonsky, Rick De Gregorio, Ricardo Valdez, Jose CZ, Alid Morgan, Tukathri, Wah, Derek B, Arias Portillo, Alvin J, Mario Delgado, Aurelius Delgado, Toy Cartel, Sith Scale Collector, and he's right here. That's cool. And Jared Gagne, Alberto Cortez, Big Rib, Trevor Weed, Jared Gagne again. I still got that slide. Matt Clevenger, Dalmatin, Stephen Percha, Sean Yautzi, Scott Bradley, Stephen Maria Stanley, Eddie Manzanares, Louis Bennett, Chip Heron, Exodus, Abe Dunk TV, and GG the Judgmental. Thanks very much, guys, for all your support. We really appreciate that. And thank you, Mike, for stepping up today and also being a Patreon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Um, yeah, it was a good chat. And yeah, if you want to join Patreon, The $5 hot seat will get you access to the After Dark replays. So that's one extra show on demand per week if you don't make the time to watch it live. And as soon as you go up from that, you get entitled to some of the other benefits, including a sticker that's sent out for each month. They get sent out two at a time. And our current September October Patreon benefit stickers are the Ox Joker and the Dark Timeline sticker, which the Dark Timeline is the reason that this is not as good as Alien and Aliens, if you're wondering. Um, and then we got our YouTube channel members: Absolute Irwin, Alvin J, Andrew Gibo, Benjamin Hansen, Big Ol' Fern, Bob Dylan, CC3PO, Chris V, CT603, DJ, Daminator, Doc Smizzle, Equan, Fat Batman, Gare Bear, Good Ol' Spotchka, Gotham Cenobites, Justin Sports Cards, LV Avenger 702, Mark Pearson, Mike Litteris, Money Mendez, OG Fan, OMFG Rick, 1/6 Figure Focus, Paul Schreiber, Philip the Fool, S Beam, Sam Gist, Scarn Lord, SpongeBob SquareBalls, Sunnyvale Russ, The Ben Thomas Show, Toy Mafia, and Exodus. Thanks very much for all your support, guys. We really appreciate you. And if you're watching the network on a regular basis, we are CW Movie Night. Thomas will be back with me in a couple weeks, and then you got the main show, Collecting Weekly Live, every Tuesday. And that's for all your 1/6 figure news and reviews. And then Small Talk next week, which I'm on that as well, and that's 1/12 and smaller figures. Mind Flayer's Web, which is I don't know if it's every Saturday, but it's the guys playing Baldur's Gate 3 for you D&D fans. And then After Dark is live every Wednesday night, and Just Another Friday Night on Fridays, and they cover a lot of your entertainment news and current TV shows. And I don't know, Mike, what have you've been doing a few After Darks recently? Anything else on the network?
Yeah, I was not on this network here. Jumped on Let's Get Nuts with Ben Thomas a couple times. Yeah, just kind of just wherever there's an opening, happy to jump in and just BS with you guys and talk all this nerd stuff that we love.
Yeah, man. Well, I don't, maybe it wasn't After Dark. I feel like I'm seeing more of you recently, but you got some great takes on stuff, and it's cool to sort of have you in the
Appreciate it.
mix. And I really appreciate you stepping up for tonight's episode of CW Movie Night, which brings me to our last order of business here. On our next episode in 2 weeks, you're gonna have one of Thomas's picks here, and that is Barbarella from 1968, which it's something I've already seen and know that it's good, which is a great place for me to be. But I don't know, Mike, do you have any memory of this movie? You have any quick take on Barbarella?
I have never seen it.
Okay, well, the nice thing is, if you don't watch it before our next episode, it's not the end of the world if you get spoiler alerted about some schlock from 1968. But it's a fun time. It's the kind of thing you can put on while you're doing something else and occasionally be amused by it. But yeah, man, that's it for our show here. And once again, get better soon, Thomas. We'll be glad to have you back on our
Yeah.
next episode. And thanks very much for hanging out tonight, Mike.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, anytime. Thanks for having me, and just keep the seat warm for Thomas, and hope to have him back here pretty soon.
Sounds good. Have a good night, everybody.